Hey everyone, this episode is a timely and insightful conversation with Harold Carter. He's the Senior Vice President at Express Scripts. Harold walks me through how they're capping GLP-1 costs at $200 a month, creating new ways for plans to expand access, and rethinking formularies as more than just cost controls. We also get into digital tools, patient support, and how PBMs can evolve to actually improve outcomes at scale. You don't want to miss this conversation. Enjoy the episode with Harold Carter. Greetings, everyone. This is Eric Glazer, and welcome to Bright Spots in Healthcare, produced by Bright Spots Ventures. We are dedicated to accelerating innovation through content, communities, and building meaningful connections. And our mission is quite simple: to spotlight what's working here in healthcare and help scale it. We bring together leaders from health plans, hospitals, and other healthcare organizations across the land who share with all of you proven strategies that drive measurable impact. And through the Bright Spots in Healthcare podcast, our private executive councils, our private events, and our go-to-market work, we try to surface and amplify these bright spots, these proven innovations, so that you can learn different things from them and replicate them at your organization. Because at our core, we exist to foster trusted relationships that fuel real progress. Because we believe the best way to improve healthcare is to find a bright spot, something that's working, and clone it. If you've not subscribed to Bright Spots in Healthcare, we encourage you to do so wherever you listen to your podcast. Just type it right in and press subscribe. This also, by the way, helps your peers find the show and get access to all the great insights that this show offers from the guests that we have, like the one we're about to introduce to you right now. Because today we're going to be diving into one of the biggest disruptors and opportunities in healthcare, and that is the surge of GLP-1 therapies and what it means for the future of benefit design and pharmacy benefits in general. Joining us is Harold Carter, Senior Vice President of Trade Relations at Express Scripts. Harold is helping lead a transformation of how one of the largest PBMs in the country is approaching this moment by rethinking formularies, funding models, and the very role of PBMs in improving health at scale. We're going to talk about not only just how GLP-1s and insurers are changing benefit designs, but we're going to talk about potentially expanding access to GLP-1s for Americans. We'll explore everything from risk-sharing models and GLP-1 strategy to the role of digital tools in shaping behavioral change. Really excited for this conversation. Harold, welcome to the show. Let's kick off and talk about... Say it again?
Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, great. This is great. I know we've been planning this for a while. I want to get into just one big innovation or bright spot or change at Express Scripts that you believe is, effectively tackling cost, access, or health outcomes differently today than we were doing tomorrow. We'll start there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the more recent ones is proud of one of the announcements that we just made around capping the cost of GLP-1s for weight loss at $200 and bringing down the cost for our plan sponsors, which will ultimately allow us to expand access in the marketplace. So really happy around some of the strides that we've been able to make in that space over the last year or so.
So how does that work? So you're able to bring on certain GLP-1s from manufacturers, and the cost is going to be $200 to the plan and the consumer?
So I'll give you a little bit more detail. So yeah. As you've looked at the marketplace, you've seen a lot of direct to consumer and other services that are out there where patients are having to pay $500, $1,000, et cetera. We wanted to look at a way that how do we work with both manufacturers to bring down potentially the cost for plan sponsors, but also give us an ability to sort of ensure that, particularly in areas where patients don't have coverage today, that plan sponsors have a way to bring on and sort of expand access. So the out-of-pocket, instead of being a direct-to-consumer of $500 or even higher, is that it's significantly cheaper. So it's a way where a patient has tremendous amount of savings versus what they're sitting today. A plan sponsor has an ability to sort of bring on access at a lower cost and have some more predictability affordability. So really turns into a win-win for the overall healthcare system.
Great. So, Eric Glazer would only be paying $200 for the GLP-1 based upon how you kind of bridge the gap between manufacturer, plan sponsor.
Yeah.
You guys.
And today, many of our patients already pay under their benefit, pay a significantly lower out of pocket. This is a way to really help sort of bridge away from the cash paying fully out of pocket for the full cost of that drug to paying something significantly lower for a patient. So again, really sort of puts together a great world and a much more affordable situation that exists for some patients that don't have coverage under their benefit today, and gives some more options to our plan sponsors or our clients to sort of continuing to expand access, or maybe open up access where they didn't have it before.
So could we do could we go back to the future, so to speak? I mean,
Yeah.
when we're rethinking how benefits are structured around these drugs, what if we started from scratch? Okay, if you were designing pharmacy benefits today for populations with high rates of lifestyle related chronic diseases, right? Everything we just talked about, how would it look different from maybe a traditional formulary model?
It's a good question. So when you think about, folks always say, quote unquote, lifestyle chronic diseases. These are chronic diseases, and we're learning more about the diseases. We're learning more about the science that these are, chronic diseases themselves. The healthcare system, as you kind of take a step back and you look at, we'll use GLP-1s and we'll use some other sort of disease states to give you some context. The treatments that were out there previously, they weren't very good, right? They were fairly ineffective. And so treatment around this wasn't prevalent. You weren't seeing patients use these products for long periods of time, seeing great outcomes. But as the science and the treatments have sort of evolved and become much greater, it really sort of changes the way around how we view some of these classes and how we need to treat them. It's the same that we've seen with innovation in gene therapies, that the healthcare system is so used to covering chronic diseases, but gene therapy, many of them are potentially curative. And so how do you fund the model differently? So again, as innovation has come to the marketplace, we need to also make sure that whether it's coverage, how we manage these treatments has to sort of evolve with that. And so I think today we have this binary sort of decision process if something's covered or not. I think with the world that we're living into is there's options for supplemental benefits. There's an ability to sort of do unique arrangements that give expanded access to care to patients, but also gives more predictive to plan sponsors, because the cost and the sheer amount of patients potentially eligible for these treatments continues to expand. And so that's a real challenge for plan sponsors. So we have to sort of rethink the benefit, how it's structured, how we think about sort of funding or sort of covering potentially covering some of these newer treatments.
And what role do you guys or the PBMs kind of play in, let's say, ensuring that these therapies, you have access, but then also what about the fragmented care and everything that kind of could trickle down from let's just say a supplemental program like you just alluded to?
Yeah, definitely. So I think one of the things that the markets is starting to understand, particularly with a lot of these future treatments, these newer treatments, and what we see in the future is it's not just about the drug, it's about the entire ecosystem that's supporting that patient. How are you helping them through their journey, particularly on educating them on potentially lifestyle changes to make, what to expect with those products? How do you put tools in the hands of providers, as well as additional tools in the hands of providers, whether that's virtually or an additional sort of front? How do you work with the pharmacies themselves? And so when we think about sort of the entire picture of this, it's not just the drug itself. And that's become very evident in the data, right? Over 50% of patients that are on a GLP-1, they're off therapy. They fall off therapy within the first year. And so when we think about it's requirement for us not just to think about the unit cost of the drug, which is important. That's, some of the basics of what a pharmacy benefit manager is hired to manage. But it's also about how do you sort of look at the patients, identify the right ones, and actually support them through the treatment so they get the best outcomes possible. And that requires a much holistic viewpoint.
Got it. And when we're talking, I want to just switch. I mean, obviously, this is such an interesting dilemma, right? Because the drugs themselves seem to have a lot of incredible prospects for reducing cost of care if we can get the cost of the drugs down, right? So what have you learned in the last year or so as you're thinking about funding models? Like, what have you learned about the funding models and what's required to support these therapies? And let me back it up. Whether it's GLP-1s or gene therapy or any of some of these novel medication interventions that you're seeing that are obviously all high cost, what are you learning more about the funding models and what's required to support patients that need these therapies?
Yeah, definitely. So we've learned, different payment models, value-based arrangements, all of those things. Been in the marketplace for some time. We've learned a lot of what worked, what didn't work. Here's what I would tell you, or sort of go to the basics of it all. First and foremost is for plan sponsors or payers that sort of covering these or paying for these bills every day. They need predictability on what their spend is going to be. So how much do we expect to spend, not just on the drug side, but also on the medical side, and what does that look like? That's first and foremost. The second piece is the expectations of patients being able to afford it. So what does that out of pocket look like? We've seen that whether it was in insulin and some of the things that we did from some tools we have like patient insurance program, et cetera, where we capped out of pocket at $25. Previously, we've certainly done some things here with weight loss with GLP-1s. So those are two of the biggest items that we think about have to be true. And then next is, how do you take a patient through that journey to make sure that they have the best success? And after that, then there's areas where we go at risk to sort of help safeguard our clients around some of the spend that we can't sort of guarantee. So if I look at, I'll use a few great examples today, is if I look at one of our services that's around GLP-1s, we guarantee our clients what their trend's going to be. And if not, then we end up taking on some of that risk. So it becomes really just, how do we stand behind the tools and services that we do today? How do we think about their overall cost, and not just, what discount did I get with the drug manufacturer, which is important on bringing down the cost of the drug. But more importantly, how am I managing that overall spend, and even us as an organization putting our money where our mouth is to help support them through that journey. So that's how you've started to see the market and some of these newer treatments that we've really sort of leaned into and helped our clients sort of navigate through.
Okay, so plans need predictability and patients need to be able to afford it. That goes without saying. So you're guaranteeing, or doesn't sound like you're fully guaranteeing, but you're putting at risk, hey, here's what this is going to cost you guys. And if the spend goes too high, we'll cover some or all of it, or whatever the deal is.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so again, that aligns both of us to a shared journey. And when we do that, right, it's tied to how we take care of the patient as well. So at the end of the day, all of our clients, as well as us as a PBM, we want patients to have great access for those that need it. We want to make sure that we remove as much friction as possible going through that process. And there's certainly steps that patients will sort of take through this journey. But we have to do it in a way that we can continue, plan sponsors continue to provide an adequate benefit.
And when you say patients' ability to afford it, so going back to the original answer of $200, so you're saying, yeah. Are we talking about $200 copay on doses, or is that a $200 almost deductible on the GLP-1? And how is that working with, let's say, I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but let's pretend, using the ingredients you just put on the table there, that you guaranteed a certain trend to a health plan, and let's say you're willing to share 50% of the risk if it goes north of that. And now you got to create with the health plan the benefit design that's going to make it all work as well as make it affordable. how does that last piece come into play? Could I add that part of the story for everyone?
Yeah. So looking from a patient perspective, we would cap out their out of pocket per month at $200. Again, there's a lot of areas where the copays are significantly lower than that already today that cover it. But for patients, particularly in plan sponsors that don't cover weight loss, right? Patients are paying sort of the full price that's out there in the marketplace, whether it's through one of the direct-to-consumer solutions that it's $500, if not more. This gives an ability for a plan sponsor to introduce coverage, potentially at a lower cost to the plan sponsor than they would have expected. But for the member, it's significantly lower than what they're seeing in some of those other services of $500, et cetera. We're able to do it at a much lower cost, even for the member.
Okay, great. And so when we're talking about now populations and formulary strategy, let's talk about how are you thinking about formularies, not just as cost controls, but maybe as part of a broader behavioral change ecosystem. And in doing also, I had read, like, you had said, formularies aren't necessarily the main levers for a population health strategy. So I'm going to throw you two questions. One, like, unpack that for me, as well as talk about how you guys are thinking about formularies as part of a broader behavioral change ecosystem.
Yeah, definitely. So when you think about formularies are one of many tools that we have, not just at our organization, but across the marketplace. And they serve two big purposes. One is to ensure that patients have access to the most clinically effective treatments. And so when you think about our organization, we have our pharmacy therapeutics committee that goes through a process of, without any insight into any financials, and they determine what drugs are clinically superior, what drugs where they're clinically equivalent, or which ones are inferior. Those that are superior always have to go on our formulary, regardless of the cost of them, because as an organization, we put clinical first. So that's always going to be true. And then we leverage that to sort of help lower or prefer what's the lowest net cost based on those guardrails that PNT has sort of provided to us. And so if you think about just the history of a formulary, right? There's classes in the past, like we talk about statins that are really cheap today. We talk about hepatitis C products, et cetera. These are drugs that we don't even talk about, right? They're particularly statins. They're pretty cheap, right? They're very cheap. There's a lot of them out there. There's generics. Well, a lot of the ways that we were able to sort of get the cost of those of statins when there were brands competing against other brands or were generics entered the marketplace is using tools like our formulary to bring down the cost of those drugs by leveraging that competition. And that gave us a greater ability to ensure that more patients were able to get access today. And so a lot of these drugs that we're so used to that everyone's using and that there's a lot of clinical data around it, most people forget that the reason that we got there was because of formulary and the things that we were able to do there. So it really helps us to sort of ensure that we're able to bring down the cost so that more patients can sort of get access to it. When I think above and beyond that, though, for whether it's how I think about engaging patients, et cetera, there's so many other sort of tools that we use as an industry and certainly as Express Scripts to sort of engage patients. One is, for example, if I know that there's a high probability of a patient becoming non-adherent to their treatment or they have other risk factors, how do I engage them effectively within the population health lens to inform their providers to make an informed decision to help their pharmacists understand what's going on so we can take steps to bring them back on treatment. We know that there's going to be other areas where you look at genomics where we know that there's patients that are more likely to respond to therapy versus not. And so because we are sort of the most utilized benefit within the healthcare system, we have the insights there to inform, support, and help sort of facilitate those messagings, that communication to ultimately lead patients to better outcomes. And so again, I think formulary serves as a good purpose to sort of ensure that there's greater affordability, but all the other tools and requirements that we have in the marketplace or solutions that we have in the marketplace are going to be the things that help drive looking at population health. How do we sort of engage effectively so that we're able to improve the lives of those that we serve?
So obviously, the PBM role continues to evolve, continues to be a little bit more, I don't know if it's hands-on, but certainly more of a partner to plans. How do you see the role continuing to evolve, let's say over the next 3 to 5 years, especially in light of all the changes we're seeing with policies and the industry as a whole?
Definitely. I think at its core, I think pharmacy benefit managers still will be responsible for helping control costs. That's going to the cost of drugs. That's going to be important. But as we look at the innovation that's happening in the marketplace, there's so many more things that are necessary to help ensure that a patient's successful on those treatments. And so I think as you start looking at where the pharmacy benefit managers go, I think even for our organization is first and foremost is how do we improve sort of the journey for a patient through a more digital experience? Right. Folks are always using their phones, right? I got my phone right next to me. I'm sure you have yours next to you. Of how do we engage the patients in a way that they want to be engaged? How do we give them greater transparency into, for example, what's the cost of the medication? What did their plan sponsor cover? What are they left to sort of cover themselves? Are there alternative options for them to understand? Were they in the process of their treatment becoming sort of available for them? There's going to be areas where it's important for us to put tools back in their hands, whether it's through how they engage with their doctor digitally, how we make sure that they understand the entire spectrum of services and options that they have on a go-forward basis. And then how do we use things such as artificial intelligence or AI to actually take away a lot of the friction in the system. I know that there's a lot of times around prior authorization, the frustration that's out there. Prior authorizations offer sort of have a unique sort of place in the spectrum to make sure that patients get access to clinically appropriate treatment. But at the end of the day, we can really use technology in a way to sort of answer a lot of those questions that maybe are already available in the medical data and the pharmacy data, so that patients and providers don't have to go through some of those processes or some of the manual processes that they see today. So again, I think there's a lot that we can do, particularly since we are the most utilized benefit, to make that the experience as well as a patient journey a lot more seamless than what it looks like today.
And how does that work with the NTM programs that are being put in place on the plan side? I mean, there sounds like there could be some redundancy if we're not careful.
Exactly. The way that I think about this is it's less about putting up, it's how do you remove some of the barriers that are existing there today? Because the more that we can use automation, it frees up things, not just as we look at technology, that offers a great opportunity to remove some of the work that today the providers in their offices are doing so that they can do the things that they do best, which is taking care of that patient, working with them, helping them understand what's going on and preparing them. There's also things that we can do, I think, leveraging technology to remove some of the steps that patients need to do and the pharmacies need to do. There's also areas where we continue, I'm a pharmacist myself, that pharmacists have go to school for a long time. There's a number of services that as clinicians, pharmacists can provide in their communities. And so how do we partner more with that? And we've had the opportunity to start working with a number of pharmacists around additional services. We call it More Than RX. And there's certainly more details that we'll give at the end that you can go to evernorth.com to find out about. But there's ways that we can engage in the healthcare system that allows folks to be able to sort of work and provide more services that they did in the past to sort of improve the outcomes for patients and and work with them in their communities where they know folks.
So I'm just going to give you another one. I'm going to give you a blank slate, especially because it sounds like I love how your mind's working here. Like, so you're talking, there's a lot of progressive strategies and thoughts in all of your answers here. And I'm wondering if we could just build a member experience from scratch,
Yeah.
like let's kind of paint a picture with a blank slate here. What would that look like if Harold Carter was in charge?
Yeah, if I was in charge, and I'll tell you what I think, and I actually think this leans into a lot of what you're seeing, what our organization has communicated publicly, but also what you're seeing in it is a much more sort of digital, sort of focused experience that you can go into and sort of understand what's going on, from everything on how do you select, if I'm having an issue, how do I select the provider that I want? How do I understand what pharmacy I want to go to? What are the services under my benefit that I can sort of select from? And it gives me everything in one window or one door that I can enter into, versus the disparate process of I have to go here for this information, I have to go there for that information, et cetera. Being able to sort of just walk into one door to sort of understand everything and take action versus having the confusion. I think that's the ultimate goal, and I would say is sort of the best outcome of this all. We've been able to do some of that, exactly that, with some of our plan sponsors. We did a pilot with a number of them, and now this is actually a service we provide where we were able to sort of create an ecosystem that all vendors sort of connect into, including us as Express Scripts. And as part of that, a plan sponsor can actually bring forward all of their benefit options, everything, not just from healthcare, but also their financial services that you may have that's covered under your benefit, everything, and determine where you push and pull information to make sure that at an individual level, a patient has what they need based on their unique situation. And so again, these aren't sort of things that we're all thinking about could exist or would exist. These are things that we're actually starting to move forward in the healthcare system. We've got a lot more work to do. There's a lot more that we have to think about. There's a lot. AI represents a great opportunity for us to accelerate some of these things, but that's the world that I think good looks to me on how I would want to have my healthcare sort of administered to me. There's always going to be cases where I want to get on the phone. I want to have direct contact with my provider as well as my pharmacist, but I want to have the ability to decide how I go about handling that versus it being dictated to me.
Okay, Harold. So I'm going to give you. So when you said a lot of things, I'm going to take the role of the patient here. Okay, so
Definitely.
This is what I think the member experience should be, and you could tell me what's possible and what's not today. And I'll give you an in the clinic kind of example, but it could be more easily done on a virtual visit too, more easily.
Yeah.
And I think our listeners could picture this too. So imagine every single doctor's office has a large screen TV on the wall. And I'm done with my appointment. And there's 2 or 3 medications that my doctor needs to choose from. So based upon what my situation is and what my physician thinks best, a menu shows up on the screen, just like it would if I was at a restaurant, right? And it's the name of the drugs. There's a column that says prior auth, yes or no. Yep. Copay, and maybe I can't, off the top of my head, maybe sort of what the drug does at a high layman's level. And my physician goes through, I'm thinking of one of these 3 medications for you. The first 2 are going to get approved by your insurer. I would probably choose this one, but you can decide. Here's the side effects. Here's the up and down. The third one would be I would have chosen, but it's not prior authorized, so you may not get approved. I would put in a pitch for it. What would you like to do, Eric? Right? It's right there in front of me. I see all 3. I see what's prior auth. I see the copays and everything that goes on my responsibility and some of the clinical layman explanation with my doctor. And of course, if it's online, and I think you were sort of saying that, but I'm curious, why is that, could that be done today or could we be going in that direction? As you're thinking about reinventing the member experience, the health plans listening, I wonder if they would agree with me, would that be good for them? I'm sure physicians would agree. So just respond to that.
Yeah, definitely. So that's not always consistently happening, right? It's sometimes found out after the
I
fact.
don't think it's ever happening, but go ahead. Yeah.
So there are cases where that's available. Now, what has to be true is you have to connect into the EMR, and there's all of those different connections, et cetera, that you have to work through. But patients have that. And for the goal is, I think long term is, and as we're talking about some of the things we're doing, is how do you get to that every time on a consistent basis? And I would challenge, even the comment you made is, does it require a prior authorization? Well, if we look at it and if we use technology right,
if I already have a prior auth, like it's like
what? Yeah.
So I know.
Yeah, but even in an interesting world, right? If we're using technology right, there should be more and more cases where we're able to use technology to validate if that patient would qualify for it or not. So
real-time authorization. Real-time.
Yeah. So if we already know that through technology, the data we have at hand, does that take it off of it? That's, hey, for that patient, no, there's not a prior authorization because we know that they qualify for it. So how do you get even more succinct on sort of, as you're laying out those options, sort of removing some of the additional steps that are out there, so that maybe in some cases we could say, hey, listen, here are the drugs that are preferred, prior authorization already taken care of because we have the data to validate that. So now, or there's a unique situation for that patient, so that you can even turn that experience on more even unique to the individual member. And so when I think about it, agree with you there. How do you get there? But how do you even do it even better? Focusing on that specific member versus just here's our patient versus here's what your here's what your benefit says. Well, here's what your benefit says uniquely to your situation and what path to go down.
I love that. And I do have to, when I was talking to you, I was in my mind's eye envisioning it in my chart, not that they need any more promotions, but like that's what I was envisioning.
Yeah.
But listen, when you come up with that and you need some extra UAT guys, call me. I mean,
okay. Deal.
Let's kind of give some more, enough about me, right? Let's give some more guidance to the health plan leaders listening. What advice would you provide and health plans, self-insured folks, even the health systems who are navigating all of this GLP-1 craziness? And I know it's coming down a little bit, but what would you advise them? What advice would you give them as far as what's going on with the fast changing kind of GLP-1 space and the specialty pharma space in general?
Yeah, definitely. I would ask the question of, and the good part is we get this all the time, right? How are you preparing for not just now? So what are you doing to help manage my overall cost for these products? And how are you ensuring that, because so many patients have a failure or potentially a failure fall off therapy, what are you doing for those that ultimately are using it to actually ensure that they're successful? So if you're a plan sponsor, you're going to pay for it. You want to make sure that it works. And then that's where, if it doesn't work, how do you work with manufacturers and maybe value-based arrangements to sort of get some of those dollars back to the plan sponsor if a patient doesn't respond? The second thing I would ask is, how are you preparing for the future, right? GLP-1s, this is here to stay. There's more indications that are coming. There's more competition that's coming. There's certainly things that's happening from a regulatory perspective, particularly in Medicare. So what is your game plan? How are you thinking about it? How are you preparing for it over the next few years so that there's a game plan? And then secondly is, even think about outside of GLP-1s. There's a lot of treatments in the marketplace. We have to be responsible for plan sponsors, helping them understand, who do you think of your patients or of your members may actually qualify for these treatments? What's the cost, and how are you sort of handling that process? So it's not just about how are you thinking about managing it, but how are you going through and understanding their unique patient population to understand what they should be projecting or expecting, so that they can come up with, you can collaborate on a game plan. So a few questions to ask.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. This was great. And so, when you're thinking about, and you kind of answered this, but like, those are the questions you should be asking your PBM to do, right? Those are the things that you should be pushing them to do today.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's becomes even more important going forward, just given clearly the great innovation that's coming out of from the market. but two, it also is the costs are becoming higher. And so the stakes are a lot higher than they used to be. And so it's going to become more important because you do see plan sponsors questioning, can they afford these things going forward? And so being able to sort of project, have a conversation, and really talk about innovatively how you're solving those is going to be important. Because while we negotiate certainly with manufacturers and pharmacies on ensuring that we're getting the unit costs as lower as possible, in those situations, it's also about how do you manage the overall spend, just given the magnitude in some of these of the patients that members may qualify, but also the cost that's associated with these treatments.
Love it. Doing great here. I'm gonna close things out here with a couple of fun questions.
Okay.
So, if you had a chance, let's say we got your real estate in front of, I don't know, every health plan, health system, and large employer, and you had a chance to get one message in front of everyone, like a giant billboard in front of each one of these offices, like what would it say? If there was kind of could be your words, a quote to live by that you really want people in our industry to stop and think about.
Yeah, so I'll be selfish and think about it, at least from our lens as an organization, is there's a lot of rhetoric out there, a lot of comments being made about PBMs, but at our core, we advocate for those who we serve, whether it's the patients that we work with day in and day out, or the plan sponsors that we work with. And just to give you a great example is, less than a percentage of my employees are working with are negotiating with drug manufacturers or working with pharmacies. The vast majority of the employees of our company are working, whether it's nurses, working with patients day in, day out on how to sort of prepare for unfortunate diagnosis and helping them get to a better path. It's pharmacists educating patients on what to expect. It's us working through MTM services. It's us working with our plan sponsors on how to rethink their benefits and how to prepare for day in and day out. So there's so much more that we do outside of just what people sort of historically talk to us about, that I think it's important for folks to understand. We're the ones ensuring that pharmacists have at their fingertips potentially drug interactions so that they're informed decisions. How do we communicate to providers? So again, when I talk about and I say we're advocates, it's really sort of born out of that concept, in sort of addressing, I think, some of the things that are being said out there in the marketplace and how we handle it.
Okay, so it sounds like you need someone like me to come up from that with your billboard.
Yeah.
Not gonna fit. That's not gonna fit. So it sounds like
no, we're advocates.
So okay, I was gonna say advocate for patients.
We're your advocates. Yeah.
Or we're your advocates. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
I just figured I would give you some context before, because you're like, well, what does that mean? So
I understand. I got it. You got it. I love it. So I wrote down. I was writing notes, so it was exactly what you said. Go ahead.
Well, Eric, and I would say too is, and hopefully from the conversation, folks are sort of understanding the viewpoint of how the market's moving forward, how we're thinking about the market. And I do think it sort of continues to innovate into a world that is much more sort of continues to grow in collaboration, evolves. It uses digital tools. It removes some of the friction in the marketplace. So a long road to go, but I'm excited about what the future looks like and the opportunities that are there.
I just really enjoyed this. You're going to be in charge of some big company, organization in healthcare that changes the paradigm very soon. I could already see it. I just see the talent. So where can people find you or follow the work that you guys are doing at Express Scripts?
Yeah, definitely. So you can go to evernorth.com, or you can look up me on LinkedIn. There's a lot of things on our website that we give research. So we do have Evernorth Research Institute, where they're oftentimes just doing research on trends, what's happening in the marketplace, potential implications of drugs being approved or things happening at FDA. So it gives a lot of different insight on what's happening in the marketplace, how we're thinking about things. It's not branded around our products or services, et cetera. It's just meant to give sort of here's how we see the world from a data perspective, et cetera. We also have some areas where you can see what's some of the latest and greatest things that we're working on from a services perspective. Not to sort of still the coin, but some bright spots in a lot of bright spots that we're seeing with our clients and patients that we work with every day. So a lot of great things going on there. And then certainly you can find me on LinkedIn.
Great. That's a royalty payment you owe. No, that's great. All right. Well, thanks, Harold. This was great. Thank you for the prep. Thank you for the time. Thank you all who are listening today. We do not take the time you spend with us ever for granted. And so we hope we use the bright spots that Harold shared today, the ideas, to inspire your thinking and enhance your organization's current approach to benefit design, pharmacy strategy, pharmacy benefits, and just improving healthcare for all of us. We produce this show for all of you. And remember, this is your Bright Spots in Healthcare podcast. Take care, everyone.